And we're live. Hope everybody's doing good here on this Tuesday night, early spring. I don't know if you guys can see that too well, what I got up there on the screen. The definition of the word transpose, which states to, oh, I can't see it. That's for damn sure. Let's see. To cause two or more things to change places with each other. And the example they give is the captions describing the two state flowers were accidentally transposed, meaning one state was described as the other state and vice versa. Okay, why is that word important? Why is that word important? Well, I think it's important because it's the word that Kathy Schenck used as to why a tip narrative filed by Dan Dulin on February 18th of 2017 was supposedly misfiled, put into a bank box, and stuffed into a desk, not to be noticed again for another 5.5 years. And when she did find it, she was digitizing the 14,000 tips that she was then responsible for putting in the system. This was after organizing them physically. Some things aren't very clear. You guys can hear me okay, right? Is that correct? You guys got good I'm not breaking up or anything. I am on this satellite signal, so I don't have Ethernet, and I would like to make sure of that. Oh, good. Thanks, Hiawatha. Farm folk, by the way, excellent. I don't know if anybody. Okay, here I go, Junior. I'm getting sidetracked already. No, I'm not going to do it because this is serious business. But before I get into that, who found the tip narrative, I want to state that I'm not doing this broadcast from the angle of where I'm thinking Richard Allen is innocent and I'm trying to prove his innocence or be part of that Defense Daddy crew. I'm not part of anybody's crew. I'm part of the Truth crew, the Derek Farmer crew. Not asking anybody else to be a part of that with me, but for me to exist as a human being, I got to go over a few things before they're settled in my head. And I know a lot of other creators out there who I respect totally are, they're against this. They're against this sort of talk and they don't want to, do this anymore. And, and I'm sort of on board with that. I mean, you guys watch thank you, Hiawatha. You guys watch, my broadcasts are pretty varied, I would say. Oh, let me put myself up on the screen. I know you guys, just, there we go. Freaking live to see that mug. So, anyways, welcome to the country. I don't know if anyone saw the pulled pork episode the other night where I cooked ham. That was pretty good. Or the some of the shorts I've been doing. I've been a little heavy on the gun thing, but it's been really kind of fun to as a release to shoot those guns, and I do it safely and with safety in mind and responsibly, without drinking and all that kind of stuff. So I feel that I'm okay with that. I don't feel like I'm showing off. I mean, honestly, where I live, they're absolutely necessary. I'm battling mice the size of mice, here tonight as we speak. I mean, they're running around in my field of vision from time to time. They're not that scary to me. I mean, I see some people jump up on a chair or on a couch or something if they get a mouse, but I just yell at them and tell them, like, go away. I mean, the flies got really annoying today. I don't know if there's a litter box under my RV or, I don't, how do I put this cleanly? Well, see, when I had it moved in here, I'm not a good fixer of things. Here we go, Junior. I'm getting sidetracked. If you could reach a hand through this screen and slap me upside the head, Junior, now's the time. But I'll do it quick. I don't fix things well, yada yada, unless I know what the hell I'm doing. So this RV gets towed in here. Well, there's like a sewer pipe or something called a sewer pipe underneath of this thing that got sort of somehow disengaged from I guess what we would call the crapper. So it's all just a big mess right now. Thank God there's a 24-hour Shell station around the corner. If you guys are up there watching tonight, I love you guys. Sorry I overflowed the toffee cappuccino machine once again, but it says halfway or 3/4, but that's bullshit, and you guys know it. Anyways, to get back on point. So, okay, here we go. I'm just going to say this. If Richard Allen is a lone wolf, okay, and I believe he's guilty. Again, this broadcast isn't about trying to clear him. If anything, I'm really starting to feel as if there was some major malfeasance and or a conspiracy in terms of why it wasn't brought out sooner and or who else may be involved. Not that I know who that is. If RA is a lone wolf, since no data evidence in terms of a previous Richard Allen, Abby, and Libby digital relationship took place, okay, there was nothing in the transcripts that I saw that tied Abby and Libby to Richard Allen before the murders really in any way. If someone please put it up in chat if you can correct me on that. I always want to be corrected with if I fuck up. Excuse my language. Sorry, Junior. I know you hate my cussing, and I respect that about you. I just have a hard time not doing it sometimes. But okay. Anyways, let me go on here. If we are to assume that then, based on court evidence, there was no digital relationship in terms of any kind of, I know you, you know me. There's this history. Oh, you like to watch me on your TV? That's sweet. So okay. Now, keeping that in mind, though, then one must assume, based on court evidence, that the reason for them meeting on the bridge that day was by chance. It was by chance. Okay? That's a tough pill to swallow for people in this community, or some of us, that was a total chance meeting. Now, maybe Richard Allen was there to kill somebody, and they by chance walked up, and they were going to be the ones. But weren't they going to meet Anthony Schatz there that day, guys? Weren't they going to meet Anthony Schatz there that day? So you're telling me. Hang on a second here. I should have made more succinct notes, but I got so many of them today. So, okay, but that's my first point. They're going to meet Anthony Schatz, and they end up meeting Richard Allen, who what? Has no connection to Anthony Schatz that was proven in court whatsoever. Okay, so keep all of that in mind. Back to a point. If the girls, oh good, I'm glad I put that. If the girls were to meet up with the Anthony Schatz profile, whoever is representing that profile, because we know it's not the dickhead cop in Alaska or Mr. Handsome. I call him that because, I read an article where he did say, quote, pretty much paraphrasing, but pretty close, that anybody falling for a catfish scam these days deserves what they get. And I thought, in regards to this murder and that reference from him as an officer of the law, regardless of how people think he's hot, it was an asshole-ish thing to say. And quite frankly, I don't like that guy. And there's something weird about that. So we'll move on from there, though, because it has nothing to do with today's show. Back to a point. If the girls were then to meet up with the Anthony Schatz profile, but inadvertently met up with Richard Allen instead, well, where the fuck was the person representing Anthony Schatz? Okay. Where was that person when they got to the trails, when they got to the bridge? And more importantly, does it represent two separate, independent, predatory situations? Let's think about what we're saying here before we even get into what today's show is about. And we're going to get into this too, Junior. What you said there about essay. Although I don't like that word, I would rather just say, what it is. But essay to me just sounds like terrible Spanish. Anyways, where was I at here? Okay, so stay with me here. So now we're to assume, based on the evidence in court, guys, that because there was no digital connection between Anthony Schatz, aka Keegan Kline, and Richard Allen, that they didn't know each other. In fact, they said as much. There's no connection between Keegan Kline, Anthony Schatz, and Richard Allen. Yet, the girls were going to not meet Richard Allen. They were going to meet Anthony Schatz. Let it sink in. And you may be going, okay, what are the odds of that? But that's what the prosecution has sold everybody. But unless there's something I'm not aware of, they made zero connection between R.A. Anthony Schatz. Zero data indicates any previous relationship. So now we'll move on. So we are to believe then, based on the evidence presented to us in the court of law, that two independent predatory situations were corresponding at the same time. Now I have a couple questions for that. Does one predator duck behind bushes or under fucking bridges? Excuse my language, Junior. I'm sorry. I get PO'd. When the other independent predators operate their plan? Or is there a more formal protocol between evil people? Like, oh, you first, then me. Can I play through as if it's golf? Does this mean there may have been other independent predators milling about? Maybe 3 or 4 even. Because for God's sakes, if there's 2 at the same time, one murderous, one a rapist, what are we to believe? I mean, everybody must be around there, huh? Or is it more competitive between killers and sadists? How dare you mark my target? I challenge you, sir, to a duel. Sarah Carbaugh saw a mud-covered guy 90 minutes after the murders. Neither the prosecution nor the defense asked Sarah Carbaugh to describe the weight and or size of this man for some unknown reason. So, according to the pathologist, Junior, there was no sexual assault performed on these girls. Now, I mean directly on them. We do know, as we've gone through this process, that sexual assault doesn't necessarily mean direct contact. It could mean, in fact, but was he masturbating for 60 minutes? Excuse my disgusting language, but I'm not going to pussyfoot around about a guy done murdered 2 girls and did who knows what. The pathologist is saying the girls weren't touched in that way, but you know, all three arteries in their necks were slashed. And then what? He masturbates for 60 minutes before he walks out muddy and bloody and whatever else he. Well, I mean, as far as I know, that's the narrative that it was. That's the whole reason they were there, was to meet Anthony Schatz. I mean, Keegan Kline said that much in his interview. That was one of the first things that came out, right? Am I wrong on that, you guys? What did they say in the trial as to why the girls were there? Because it would have had to be an assumption unless there was some hard data that said that specifically, Junior. So good point, and thanks for bringing it up. But that was in the interview between Vito and Kline post murder sheets, not murder sheets, but I can't think of her name. She did also a well, and then in fact Keegan said when he was talking to the reporter, well, I don't know. They told me I was the last one to talk to her alive. And then they came out and said that Keegan Kline created Anthony Schatz and that the girls had, I guess they didn't say the girls were in communication with Anthony Schatz, but they said anybody who has been needs to let us know. Neither side asked any of the witnesses to describe who they seen. Crazy. Yeah, you know, I mean, so when you start throwing around words like malfeasance and conspiracy, Hiawatha, is that so irresponsible? I don't want to be irresponsible. I think Richard Allen is guilty of being bridge guy and subsequently of murder and deserves a fucking death penalty as far as I'm concerned. I have no doubt about that. What in this process prevented a man who and I'm going to put a couple articles up, self-reported that he was there at the time in the clothes. We know the whole yada yada that I do. Puts the fancy stick work on him, exactly. So, on top of that, Sarah Carbaugh, according to one news report I heard, initially said she was going 35 miles an hour around the curb where she saw bridge guy, whoever, muddy guy, because that changed from muddy bloody just to muddy. She then claimed, or somebody claimed she never said bloody. That got worked in there somehow. So and that's fine. We'll keep it at muddy. but maybe he said he looked like he had been in a fight or something. To saying that she was going 20 to 30 miles an hour faster than that, but didn't want to say that initially to police because she didn't want to get in trouble for speeding. That's all fine and well, Miss Carbaugh. But your ability to see detail 20 to 30 miles an hour faster around a curve brings your testimony into serious question. Now, that doesn't have anything in my mind to do with Richard Allen's guilt or innocence. It does, however, show a yet another peg in what I think is some real mishandling of things, guys. That's what I think. Some real mishandling of things. I'm not going to go throwing around accusations towards law enforcement and this and that and everything else. I'm not going to bring up the fact that Kathy Shank was moving stuff from one office to another and found a box in a desk. Some reports say it was her desk. Some reports say it was a desk. Some reports say there was a hair in Abby's hand. Some reports say it was twisted around the finger. Some reports, you know what I mean here? There's never any solid answers when really there could have been, there should have been, and there still could be. But instead we get in every different, it's like a different report in every one. It's the same thing they do to people with, and I hate making this comparison. I'm just not going to do it. Hey, Miranda. Hey, Miranda. Good to see you. My sister. So, here we are. So, does one predator duck behind? Oh, I already did that routine. Or is it more competitive between killers and sadists? How dare you mark my target? I challenge you to a duel. Right. Okay, if there was... hang on. All right, guys, stay with me here because I got to just kind of look around here a little bit. A couple anomalous things, but well, let's just go with what the title of the actual show that we're well, you guys are watching, and I'm attempting to stutter out there. And I'll put it back up here. Who wrote the word cleared on the tip in the box in the desk? The mystery box in the mystery desk with the mystery word cleared written on it. In whose handwriting was that written? Or was it a green dot? I only read that in one place. Everywhere else says it was literally handwritten, the word cleared. In one place said there was a green dot on it, signifying that it had been cleared. Now, okay, give me a second here. This is where we get crazy. Oh, yeah, there's crazy right there. Holy shit. Hang on. Make sure I get the right one here. Okay, well, I can't tell. I'm just going to dive into this one right here. All right. Let's see what we got here. Presuming everyone can see that. Okay. Maybe I'll pop it all up there. As much of a camera, whore as I am, I do want you guys to be able to read this. Okay. Let me, poop. I gotta, sorry, guys, I'm still kind of, here we go. Still kind of learning how to, move things around a little bit. But I think the good news is that I am moving things around. Okay, now this article is from October 28th, 2024. So it would be exactly 4 days after the testimony involving the tip narrative that was resurrected by one volunteer named Kathy Shank. Let me get to it. Okay, here we go. Boom. After years of seemingly cold investigation, Despite Indiana State Police assurances the case was still active on September 21st, 2022, Kathy Shank, a volunteer who was tasked with scanning bankers' boxes full of files in a central investigative database, pulled open the drawer of a desk. Now, I'll show you an article in a minute that says her desk, in a soon-to-be abandoned office, and discovered a file that contained an initial tip sheet from February of 2017, just a couple days after the murders, in which a man listed as Rick Allen Whiteman called in to self-report. Keep that in mind. That's important, and I'll get back to why. That he was on the bridge that day, and if his name should come up, with investigators, and they wanted to ask him questions. On the tip sheet, someone had written the word cleared. Shank testified that she read the report and immediately identified a clerical error that misinterpreted Allen's home address of Whiteman Drive as his last name. Now, I have always contended that as an investigator taking and interviewing a possible or potential murder suspect, now he wasn't a murder suspect, but at that point, isn't everyone who was there at the time that kind of looked like Bridge Guy a suspect, or should have been? That those people aren't always honest about the names they give. Yet somehow law enforcement's able to plug that information in and figure it out. And Kathy Shank was able to realize quickly that as a local, that Whiteman Drive was actually a road. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Shank. I think you may be the hero in this situation. The retired government employee took the file to Chief Deputy Tony Liggett of the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, who was running for sheriff in the upcoming election less than 2 months away. Give me a second. There we go. Okay. And he immediately began an investigation into Allen, first confirming that he drove a black 2016 Ford Focus. A security camera captured the image of a car resembling Allen's vehicle parked at a business along County Road 300 North, which runs along the border of the private property where the bodies were found. Sarah Carbaugh told jurors she saw Bridge Guy walking along that road covered with mud as if he had fallen in a creek or down the hill. I don't remember that phrase that he said down the hill, but okay. Approximately 90 minutes after investigators say the girls were killed. Now, we know what time they went missing. It was just after 2 o'clock. Now you're talking 90. Now, so then they have to assign a time of death, which I think they did around 3 o'clock or something. Now you're talking 4:30. 4:30 in February. What time was it exactly? These are the details I need to know, because in February, and if they're under daylight savings time, by 5 o'clock in February, it could be getting relatively dark. Carbaugh did not say Allen resembled Bridge Guy. And even though the defendant is 5'4" and approximately 145 pounds, neither the prosecution nor the defense asked the witness to describe the size of the man she saw. Indiana Department of Natural Resources officer Dan Dulin. Now, nobody can get his god-dang title right. He's now captain of the Department of Natural Resources, Dan Dulin, but at the time was Lieutenant Daniel Dulin, lieutenant in charge of his department, who was tasked by the higher-ups in the Indiana State Police, and I can show you these articles, and it may come up in this one, to follow up leads based on his experience, which would have been full-time like any other state police, any other county or local police officer, not some fish and game warden. He was much more than that. You're not giving him the credit he deserves, and I'm not sure why. All the people around Mr. Dulin, including the news sources, go on to then say, well, it's probably because he's not used to having to, he's just used to, fixing up a wounded bird. Lieutenant Daniel Dulin of the Department of Natural Resources was fully trained like every other cop, and they tasked him, and I say they, the Indiana State Police, tasked him to follow up on leads on February 13th, 2017. He got that lead on the 16th. He waited 2 days to even bother to follow up on it. From somebody who self-reported being there at the time of a murder? Guys, this gets deeper and deeper, guys. Now, you can see what's here in the paper now. I ain't making this shit up. Dulin testified that he interviewed Allen in the parking lot of a grocery store after unsuccessful attempts to meet him at his home or at Delphi Police Headquarters. Because why? You couldn't find Whiteman Drive? Would you accidentally go to Allen Drive, thinking that was his street name? Guys, that's bullshit. First of all, someone that is admitting they were there at the time of this heinous crime, I haven't looked at the comments in a second because I'm on this other screen trying to scroll through and give you guys the proper information, but I will get back to them and go back and read and engage with you guys on any comments that you may have. I'm just trying to get this out in case Junior wants to go to bed before like midnight. Sorry. Okay. Now, where was I? Oh, yeah, that's where I was. Meeting Dulin at the grocery store. So Dulin, again, different sources make it sound like the information came down in different ways. No one is clear on this, and I'll tell you what I mean. In some sources, you will say, Dulin contacted Richard Allen and asked him, could he come to his house or meet him at the police station? And he denied that, said no. Now, just on record, Richard Allen denied that statement in court or officially. He said he never said that, just so you know. I caught that in one of these articles. Now, but then they compromised at a grocery store? I guess Dulin testified that we'll just read through it and then I'll comment. Dulin testified he interviewed Allen in the parking lot of a grocery store after unsuccessful attempts to meet him at his home or Delphi Police Headquarters. I don't see how that's possible, but moving on. The conservation officer said, right now, Fox 59 is cutting Dan Dulin a break by calling him a mere conservation officer. Totally different requirements than what a lieutenant of the Department of Natural Resources has. You guys need to remember that. I think you need to remember it. I remember it. You don't have to. I find it just highly pisses me off that malfeasance and or conspiracy is going on here, in my opinion. I'm sorry. Okay. Now, he initially told him 1 to 3 p.m. on February 13th, Richard Allen. He revised that time okay, so there you go. When he self-reported on the phone, now it never says who he called to self-report. Did he call the sheriff's department? Did he call local Delphi PD? Did he call the Indiana State Police or a 1-800 number, the FBI? That information is lost in the shuffle somewhere. But this sentence right here makes it clear. It says the conservation officer said Allen told him he was on the bridge trail between 1 and 3 on February 13th, but later revised that timeline to 1:30 to 3:30. They only had one conversation in a grocery store for 10 minutes. So in order for him to revise that at that point means the 1 to 3 time was called in ahead of time and someone handed Dan Dulin that tip. There was no chance encounter. Okay? He was handed that tip by higher ups. and told to investigate it because that's what he was tasked with doing. Dulin said he did not find, I'm going to read this slow and listen to this bullshit. Mr. Dulin said he did not find any reason to not believe Allen's story that he had parked his car near County Road 300 North, that he had spotted 3 young women walking on a trail, that he was focused on his cell phone and reading a stock ticker during his walk to the bridge, and upon his arrival, watched fish in the water 60 feet below. Allen showed Dulin the phone he was carrying, and the officer wrote down its model and other identifying information, including the MED or whatever number, which, if you trace it back, ought to give you his correct name, not Whiteman, moron. Dulin told jurors he wrote up his report and submitted it to Unified Command. That includes Delphi Local, Carroll County Sheriff, ISP, and the FBI, as well as law enforcement officers from around the state. So after this interview with Richard Allen at the grocery store, he then wrote up an official report on it and submitted it to Unified Command, according to Dulin. I think that's important. His report remained unexamined in the file for more than 5 years. That's a contradiction of fucking terms to me, guys. Sorry, I'm cussing again. But how do you submit it to Unified Command, which includes all those agencies, and then in the very next sentence say, his report remained unexamined in the file for more than 5 years? Upon a call from investigators, get this one, in fall of 2022, Dulin said he plugged Allen's name into the DNR database and discovered that upon renewal of his fishing license 6 weeks after the killing, Allen changed his height. He heightened. By the way, anybody knows me back in the old days on Sleuth Intuition on Discord, I made a big deal out of what I called him heightening, just like that Seinfeld episode with the little people. One of them heightened, and he got ostracized from the little people community. Allen changed the height on his permit from 5'4" to 5'6", which the officer told jurors he found odd. Now, granted, I won't hold that against Dulin, as that didn't come, he didn't continue to then investigate it. He took the report and turned it in. And in the fall of 2022, right before they arrest him, Liggett and the crew there called up Dulin and said, hey, put Allen's name into the DNR database. And here's a question. We have a unified command that unifies all these departments. We got all this shit that you're supposed to be plugging in all this information to that can then be succinct information. And then we have one state agency that could have solved the crime or at least showed a huge red flag from someone that was there on the day changing their height on an official state document. Yet that shows up nowhere in any database except what? DNR? What? Okay, moving on. On October 13th, 2022, Liggett and former Delphi Police Chief Steve Mullen, who had retired to become chief investigator for the Carroll County prosecutor, called Allen into Delphi Police Headquarters for an interview, ask him of his Miranda rights, whatever that sentence means by this horrible Fox writing, to remain silent and have an attorney present during questioning, showed him a photograph of Bridge Guy, and told Allen he was a suspect in the girls' murder. I'm not going to go on with this because it goes beyond the scope of what I wanted to talk about today. Again, I believe Richard Allen's guilty of murder. Guilty of, if he didn't murder them, he led them to their deaths, knowing what was going to happen. And you know how I feel about that. You're guilty of murder. Same damn crime. So let me get back to StreamYard here. Let me put my fat head back on the screen. Hang on. I'm all worked up now. Let me get these dang comments up here. Where'd they go? Get out of the way, Kurt Mungle. Oh, all right, here we go. Comments. Oh, you guys have been commenting a little. Here we go. Okay, now I can. Now I'm with my people. Miranda says hello to Junior. I'm going to go through every one of them. There's not that many, so we're going to really soak over the. Richard Allen is still guilty. Miranda, I totally agree. I totally agree. But let me just say, with that in mind, Miranda, and just ponder this point for a moment. Isn't the whole idea of solving a murder to get and glean and gain and really soak in, not even glean, but to soak in information from that situation to prevent something like this happening again in the future? I mean, because I contend that something did happen here. Somebody screwed the pooch, is what we used to say back in the day. Now, Dan Dulin started, and I don't mind using his name. I'm not going to use initials with a publicly paid official who the public trust is dependent on this guy. And in my opinion, when you say in the trial, after all we know that he saw nothing suspicious about Richard Allen, paraphrasing, not a quote. Okay, anyways, Dulin started with the RA tip 2 full days after RA self-reported being on the bridge that day and possibly at the same time as the girls. Here's my question. How many 5'4" white men in similar clothing self-reported being on that being on that stupid bridge along with Richard Allen that day were there? In other words, to listen to Dulin talk about it, or even why pass Dulin that tip? I mean, how many middle-aged men that are short, we can say it, in the clothes described at the exact time who had time off of work from the community, well, how many of those people were like Richard Allen and self-reported? You guys see where I'm going with this, or where I'm trying to go? Because I'm thinking zero. Yet, wouldn't that be like your hottest? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. We don't know what there are 14,000 tips, right? I get that. But wouldn't one of the hottest tips be from the singular male that fits the description by the 3 minor witnesses and then self-reports and corroborates seeing those 3 minor witnesses become a bit more important? Am I out of line here? Allen refused to meet at the station or his house. Allen denied this statement. They met at a grocery store parking lot. That's where they changed the time from 1 to 3 to 1:30 to 3:30. Why? Why change the time? Maybe it was an honest mistake. I don't think it helped Richard Allen. It just helped seal his own fate because it made him look even more guilty. So now on top of this, Dan Dulin has to go back and change the time to 1:30 from the original report. And then how long later was he made aware that Hoosier Harvest Store video at 1:27 picked up Allen's goddamn car and still stood there next to Carter for the presser? La-di-da-di-da. Is this hitting home with anyone? Am I just on a rat's wheel that keeps coming back? Because I know I've talked about Dulin before, but I want to know who cleared that tip. I think it's past Dulin. How can Dulin clear his own tip? And if he did that, well, why didn't that come out? And who has... I even tried to look up who has the authority to clear tips in that situation? I mean, who knows, man? Was Kathy Shank able to clear tips? I mean, as a volunteer, I wouldn't think so, but she had many years' experience with CPS as an official investigator for Child Protective Services. Maybe that lent her some sort of sway. I don't know. Nothing against Kathy. I mean, I do think, all things being fair, that at this point she does look like the hero of this story. That literally the Keystone cops from 4 different, you have local Delphi PD, the county, the state, and the FBI, and it takes one volunteer secretary. No offense to call her a secretary. She called herself that initially, then data entry, but whatever, to solve the case. To immediately hand that off to one Tony Liggett, who immediately investigated Richard Allen and within 30 days had him arrested and then won the election. I'm not saying those things are tied, but I do believe it was during that Keegan Kline interview where Vito said it starts to stack. Yeah. Yeah, also, I mean, he put it in as Whiteman. That was something Dulin did, by the way. The way I'm putting it together. Dulin made the Whiteman mistake. That doesn't mean, again, how many murderers are honest about every detail of who they are initially? Isn't the whole idea they're trying to obfuscate who they are? And then, but people just keep saying, well, I mean, it was the wrong last name. And because it was a law enforcement officer who made the mistake, somehow that makes it different than if he would have just lied to them. I don't see or make that distinction, you guys. I wouldn't expect a murderer to give me an honest last name. So the fact that Dulin gave him the wrong last name shouldn't slow down this investigation when it comes to details, especially considering that Kathy Shank, it took her less than 2 hours to figure out Whiteman was the road, Richard Allen was the man who admitted being there, and boom, it all went down within the month. September 21st is when she found it. October 20 whatever is when they arrested him. Five and a half, 6 years later. So, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? Who? Well, Junior, that's great. Sounds like Ricky was ducking him. You can't duck someone when you know where they live, where they work. I mean, at that point, he had self-reported. He didn't self-report as Whiteman. He self-reported as Richard Allen. Whatever that means, wherever he called. I don't think they ever said, but I would like to know. Because that would indicate then who gave Dulin the tip to go follow up on the lead. I've even seen, well, let's see. Let me move on to a next, are you guys still with me on this? Am I just, I don't like that phrase. Am I just going on? Yeah, Miranda, I mean, sloppy. I agree. Sloppy would be, Miranda, I think sloppy would be a compliment. Again, how do you stand next to somebody during a press conference when the person leading the press conference is pleading with the citizens of the area, based on the fact they think it's somebody local, of any strange vehicles parked at that CPS building, which he may have called an old Farm Bureau building? Keep in mind, Dan Dulin is from the area. He knew what he was talking about. Right. And he is still guilty. I'll give you that. Definitely not going to disagree there. But why was he allowed to have 5.5 years of fun time after murdering 2 innocent girls? What in the process allowed that. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Not that he's innocent. Please understand that. I don't believe the man is innocent. I think he's guilty as hell. But I don't think sloppy police work goes far enough when public tax dollars and trust is put into these people in these positions, and not one cop in 4 departments could figure this out before a volunteer secretary did. Does she get the reward? I don't know. But if it was just one mistake, Junior, a sad mistake, they could have had him that week. I'm heading to bed. Man, you're welcome. Thank you for even staying up and watching like nearly an hour of me go on about this. It really, it really bugs me. I'm not I don't have any skin in this game. I'm not, I'm a non-monetized channel. Possibly hurting my own reputation by even bringing this stuff up amongst other creators who I respect. But I cannot let it go by without saying a couple heads ought to roll. And I say that because I want to know who wrote cleared on that tip narrative. If it wasn't Dulin, I wouldn't think you can clear your own tips. And if you're submitting that to a entire friggin', you see what I'm saying? And then it gets shuffled into a box. Whose hand put it into that box? Who put that box into that desk, into the back of it, and then to be found years later, all dusty? Blow the dust off that bitch, Hey, look what I found. This ain't the JFK investigation. There aren't documents spread all over the world. Okay? They're all in one place, yet somehow there's what? Too many desks? There were so many tips you were just shoving bank boxes anywhere you could find a fucking place to shove them and then forgetting about them? Somebody's head needs to roll. Malfeasance or conspiracy is what I'm calling. Not that Richard Allen is innocent, but that somebody else is either guilty or is so damn irresponsible with their position, they certainly don't deserve to have a job, in my opinion. Talk about a red flag. DNR. If they would have just plugged his name into that DNR database 6 weeks after the murder, they would have seen that this guy changed his height 2 inches, and that would have been, according to all of them, odd and a red flag. I say it's a red flag factory, and they're producing the largest red flags in the entire country, built right there in Delphi, Indiana. Where you want your good, Indiana-made red flags. Well, anyways, I'm just going over these here real quick, see if there's anything I forgot in terms of this. I can't find through my menial ability to do research who wrote cleared on that. I don't recall it coming out in court. I don't recall either side caring to ask pertinent questions of some pretty serious people and some pretty serious witnesses, in my opinion. It seems like a fail all the way around, with the exception of Richard Allen's guilt. Thank God they got that right. I do feel good about that, and I'm glad that someone who took part in this murder, or who was responsible for the whole thing. Again, it doesn't have to be a conspiracy to where someone knew that was all going to happen or helped out with the killing. But to me, it indicates that, and we need to know why. We need to know why that says cleared. Not just who, but more importantly, why did they write cleared on it? Based on what? Where you got a guy that fits the gosh dang description admitting he was there, would you clear it? And you hadn't even talked to him besides that one time, as they said in court. And that was a 5 to 10 minute interview at a grocery store parking lot because he didn't feel like coming down to the police station after he had self-reported that he was there at the bridge on the day, at the time, in the clothes, with the right weight, the right age, and the day off work. And the kids had a day off school. And he saw 3 girls who then saw him. That was all in there, guys. So you can think whatever you want, but there's some malfeasance somewhere. Malfeasance maybe isn't the right word. I mean, I don't want it to be something where it sounds premeditated. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say there's some bullshit. I don't like it, man. I've gone for almost an hour on this. I'm going to let it go. Anybody else got anything? I mean, it wasn't real active tonight. I mean, I don't get a lot. I don't get a lot of people, watching me without a good guest, I guess. Even then, it's pretty spotty. So I sure do appreciate who I do have here. You guys, Junior and Hiawatha. I suppose it's possible there could be a little bit of disparity between, as we know, with my experience with Cryptex, between YouTube and StreamYard. I have not been watching YouTube tonight, so it's possible maybe a few folks have left comments. If that's the case, know that I responded to all the comments that I saw. So I don't know. I guess if anybody ever hears, who did write cleared on that tip narrative and then snuck it away somewhere for it never to be found for 5 years, except for by Kathy Schenck 2 months before an election, so that Mr. Liggett could swoop in and be the hero. Let me know. In fact, you can send me that on a postcard to P.O. Box 190, Edwardsburg, Michigan. Zip code 49112. Again, that's P.O. Box 190, Edwardsburg, EDWARDSBURG, Michigan 49112. That's my box. That's my office. If anybody would like, to be a pen pal, that's the way to do it. You guys have a great night. I tried to stretch it to an hour, but I'm out of material now. But I do feel like, Junior, I know you're not watching anymore. You asked me to be somewhat succinct tonight and stay on point. And I was a little loose at the beginning, but I do feel like I got my questions out there. I don't feel like they're answered, but I'm going to keep asking them until maybe somebody does come up and give me an answer. I sure would like to know. And if anybody wants to email me that answer, djfarmer.llc@gmail.com. Feel free to leave it up in the comments. I'm an open book here. There's no hiding. There's no obfuscation here. And I hope you all have a great night here on this Tuesday night. And I'm going to smoke the other half of this doobie, have a Pall Mall, and hit the sack. Thanks, you guys. Good night.